Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Hook is the U.S. Special Representative for Iran and Senior Policy Advisor to the Secretary of State. Prior to this appointment, he served as Director of the Policy Planning Staff from 2017 to 2018. In the years from 2009 to 2017, he managed an international strategic consulting firm in Washington, held a number of senior positions in the Bush administration, including Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations, Senior Advisor to the U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Special Assistant to the President for Policy in the White House Chief of Staff Office, and Counsel, Office of Legal Policy at the Justice Department. I just want to add that the Simon Wiesenthal Center has had interaction with Brian Hook, and we've also watched how he's helped develop a more positive relationships in the Gulf. Obviously, you know who he's been on the phone with, and for the delay, I'd like to ask a special representative, Hook, to make a few comments, and we're going to change the order here. You may have, I think you want to take the questions immediately, or you want Rabbi Heyer to speak after you?
I'll make a couple.
Okay. Okay, great.
Great. I'd like to thank Rabbi Cooper for hosting me here today. It is great to be in Los Angeles, home of the world's largest Iranian diaspora. This is my first trip to California in my role as the U.S. Special Representative for Iran. And it was very important for me to come here, meet with members of the Iranian diaspora from all faiths. And last night, I went to Eretz Synagogue and gave remarks there. This morning, I went to the Nessa Synagogue and learned about the vandalism that occurred there in that synagogue, and wanted to express the administration's that we stand in solidarity opposing all acts of anti-Semitism, all vandalization, and all violence against Jews. I will here visiting the Wiesenthal Center. It's an organization that I've worked with in the past, very strongly support their work. It was an honor for me to visit the Museum of Tolerance and to see many of the exhibits they have here, and to see the great job that they're doing, seeing so many school groups move through this museum so that they can be educated about the horrors of the Holocaust, which the Iranian regime continues to deny, and underline the importance of tolerance as a fundamental goal. This afternoon, I will be going to Sinai Temple and be hosted by Rabbi Wolpe, and I'll be making remarks there. I'm happy to take a few questions.
Mr. Hook, what can you tell us about the decision-making that took place in this attack? There's been unanimity in that this individual you targeted was guilty of killing hundreds of Americans and thousands of Arabs in Syria. There's been very much some disconnect as to how this was done, and that the President is yet to bring in members of Congress to talk about the recon and the intelligence that allowed you to get it.
Well, Secretary Esper gave a press conference today, and he said that in terms of the imminence of the threat, he was asked about the imminence of the threat, the intelligence that we had was exquisite intelligence. It's also highly compartmented intelligence. But it was very clear that the man who is responsible for the deaths of over 600 Americans was plotting to kill more Americans. And when a man of his effectiveness and his lethality is plotting attacks in the Middle East, in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon against Americans, President Trump, his first responsibility as Commander-in-Chief is to ensure the safety and the security of Americans. And in the Middle East, that means American diplomats and American service members who are under threat of imminent attacks by Qasem Soleimani. And so the President made the right decision. The intelligence was sound. And so we will continue to do everything necessary to protect the safety and security of American lives. And we will take all necessary defensive measures to protect ourselves against any Iranian attacks. And by Iran, the regime, or its proxies. We do not make a distinction between the Iranian regime and the proxies that it organizes, trains, and equips around the Middle East.
Can you be
Go ahead.
more specific on these targets?
Which targets?
The imminent attacks. You said Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, but can you be more specific?
That as much as we're able to say. Qasem Soleimani was in the region for the specific purpose of planning attacks. The IRGC publicly has said he was in the region planning attacks. So you don't even need to take our word for it. His own organization has said that's what he was up to in the region. And we know that he was looking to attack Americans and American interests in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and beyond. And these were attacks of sufficient imminence that the president needed to take decisive action. President Trump has been warning the Iranian regime for a year and a half, since September 11th of 2018, that we will take decisive action in situations like this. And the regime made very bad decisions and did not heed the warnings that President Trump made and Secretary Pompeo as recently as mid-December, warning the Iranian regime to not test our resolve and to not confuse the president's restraint with weakness.
Mr. Hook, if you could describe the importance of the briefing that just took place now with Hill leaders and the nature of what was discussed, and how would you characterize their questions for the administration?
Secretary Pompeo, I believe, has said, and I, since I'm in Los Angeles, I don't have the latest on the specific meeting you mentioned with Congress, but in due course, I know that we will share the intelligence that we are able to with the Congress. In the President's National Security Team, when they looked at the intelligence, as we did, it was very clear that we were dealing with a man who is very effective and has been the deadliest terrorist in the world today, at that time, when we were looking at the intelligence. And so when the deadliest terrorist in the world is plotting imminent attacks against Americans, we needed to take decisive action. If we had not taken decisive action and hundreds of Americans were killed, we would be standing here today and you would be asking me, why didn't you do more to eliminate Qasem Soleimani?
Mr. Hook,
Yes.
in regards to the maximum pressure campaign, now that Qasem Soleimani is eliminated from the battlefield, how would it go, how would it continue with the maximum pressure campaign? And if I may ask the second one, with the start of the 2020 you deal with the Iranian community, what sort of message that the administration wants to send to the Iranian people that you started the 2020 talking to the Iranians in the U.S.?
Our maximum pressure campaign will continue. Secretary Pompeo in May of 2018 laid out our strategy after leaving the Iran nuclear deal. And that strategy is designed to deny this regime the revenue it needs to tyrannize the Middle East and to conduct these proxy wars in the gray zone. We are also putting unprecedented pressure on the regime so that we can get an agreement that addresses all of Iran's threats to peace and security. And so that strategy has been in place for a year and a half, and Secretary Pompeo has been executing that strategy ever since. And so the maximum pressure campaign, the diplomatic isolation, will continue. We have made clear that we will take defensive action to defend American lives and American interests if attacked. On the second question, did you say it's a question about the Iranian people? Could you give me that again?
Yeah, we are at the first week of 2020 here in Los Angeles with the Iranian population. What sort of message the Trump administration wants to convey to the Iranians here and also?
The Iranian people know that the IRGC and the Quds Force is responsible for the deaths and the murders of thousands of Iranians. And this is as recently as November, the protests that occurred in almost 100 cities in Iran, the crackdown where there was a Reuters report of 1,500 innocent Iranians murdered. And Qasem Soleimani is behind those murders. He is behind the injuries of thousands of Iranians, And the regime, as part of the crackdown, put well over 8,000 Iranians in prison. And so the Iranian people know very well the brutality of Qasem Soleimani against the Iranian people and against Muslims around the Middle East. He aided and abetted the slaughter of Assad in Syria that killed hundreds of thousands of people and created the worst refugee crisis since World War II. We will continue to stand with the Iranian people and their desire for a more representative government.
In the phone call that you were on for the past roughly hour, did you learn anything new about the situation, or has the situation changed at all?
Don't have anything to share on that.
Okay. What is the U.S. policy toward Iranian Americans at the borders? There was reports of people being detained on the way back from Canada.
I'm not familiar. I am not familiar with that. If it's a border question, that would be handled by a Department of Homeland Security, but I'm not familiar with it.
Mr. Hussein, you said regarding the November revolution in Iran, government killed innocent people. This happened exactly. Qasem Soleimani happened exactly after that. Now the Iranian government trying to take advantage of this to establish its, power more. What we have a plan for to support Iranian innocent people from now.
I don't think any administration has done more to support the Iranian people over the last 40 years than the Trump administration, and we will continue to do that.
Last question.
Got one more question here.
What reaction have you had from the larger Iranian American community? You said you visited with a couple of the different various faiths. What has been their reaction to you and the administration, their feedback?
Last night, at the remarks I gave last night, I think we had almost 800 people there, and just very strong support for the policies of this administration to stand up to the Iranian regime. This is a regime that is not used to being told no. The regime runs a violent, sectarian, expansionist foreign policy that is the principal driver of instability in today's Middle East. The people, the Iranian diaspora in Los Angeles here understand that. They understand the goals of our foreign policy, what we want to accomplish with Iran, an end to the nuclear program, end to the regional aggression, the ballistic missile testing, the regional aggression, the hostage-taking, brutalizing the Iranian people. And so the Supreme Leader faces a question. He can either start behaving like a normal nation, or he can continue to watch his economy collapse. The Iranian regime today is facing its worst financial crisis and its worst political unrest in its 40-year history. And as we saw the protests in November, not one of them was against the United States or the President of the United States or against American sanctions. They were all anti-regime demonstrations. None of the protests in Lebanon or Iraq occurring at the same time. These were all against the Iranian model of sectarian violence and corruption. And the peoples of Iraq and the peoples of Iraq and Lebanon and Iran, they want their country back. And they are tired of Iran being unable to stay within its own borders. Thank you.
What is your biggest worry?
We want to thank the U.S. Special Representative for Iran, who really has been on the phone for the last hour and a half, for addressing you today and taking a few questions. Rabbi Marvin Heyer, the dean and founder of the center, will add a few statements, and then very briefly we'll hear from Pastor Johnny Moore and from Juliana Tamruzi, if they'll come up right now for brief comments.
I'd like to make brief comments about this critical issue that the world faces. Three points. The position of the center on Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was the architect of 9/11, the greatest attack on the United States since Pearl Harbor. In ordering his killing in 2011, President Obama did the right thing, and the center fully supported him. Who knows what other plans a person like bin Laden and his terrorist friends in Al-Qaeda and around the world had in mind if he would have survived. The same is true about Qasem Soleimani, who was responsible for the murder of American soldiers in the midst of planning other attacks on American soldiers who are on the front lines. We're sitting here in Los Angeles, in New York, in Chicago. They're on the front lines. They deserve to be protected against attacks by terrorists. He also participated in the Amia school attack in Argentina. There is little doubt that if he would have lived, hundreds of other Americans today, tomorrow, next year, or in 5 years would have died because of him. His death is an important warning to his successor, Esmail Ghana, that he and his collaborators risk a similar fate. Now, from history. If we look back in history, the Second World War, another example of an arch master terrorist that is forgotten by the world. His name was Reinhard Heydrich, who convened the meeting to plan the final solution of the Jewish question. The president of Czechoslovakia at the time, President Beneš, ordered his assassination by members of the Czech resistance who were trained in London with full British assistance. They later carried out their mission, entered Prague in 1942, and assassinated Reinhard Heydrich. There is little doubt that had they not succeeded, tens of thousands of innocent civilians would have been tortured and murdered by this human monster. History teaches us that when you have arch-terrorists and you have inhuman human beings, who, by the way, deny the Holocaust. Imagine, the entire leadership of Iran denies the existence of the Holocaust. And we have to worry about how we treat them. If they're going to kill American soldiers, we have an obligation to do what President Obama did to Osama bin Laden, what the president of Czechoslovakia did to Reinhard Heydrich. That should be done to the Iranian leaders.
Thank you, Rabbi. About 20 leaders just participated in our meeting with Brian Hook. We've asked 2 of those participants to make very brief comments. First, I'm going to ask Pastor Johnny Moore, a leading evangelical voice here in the United States, based in Washington, D.C., to share a brief thought with you.
It is especially fitting that this great museum of tolerance is situated in the city with the largest Persian community outside of Iran, because the museum is a sobering reminder of the consequence of evil undeterred. And make no mistake, the world knows no greater evil than that perpetrated by the Islamic Republic of Iran, whose most grotesque actions have been reserved for the most innocent, and especially those unfortunate enough to be a religious minority under the control or influence of Iran's behavior. And no single human being on the planet embodied this evil more than Qasem Soleimani, a man whose sinister acts sabotaged intentionally every effort at peace, and whose work caused the death or displacement of countless men, women, and children. Soleimani, from my perspective, Soleimani is not a martyr. He was a murderer of many people in many countries, including Europeans and Americans, Iraqis and Lebanese, Yemenis, Bahrainis, Afghanis, Syrians, and especially the nation that he professed to love and to serve, Iran. And as a religious Christian and a special friend to the Jewish and Islamic communities, including many Shiite Muslims, and as an advocate for religious freedom for everyone on the planet, I'm deeply offended at the way the Iranian regime maintains a charade of piety, even as they inflict unimaginable horrors on the world, beginning with their own people. And I often ask myself, when will Iran's Shias take back their religion from those who have used it to kill so mercilessly? I see the tragedies of the revolution against the backdrop of other revered Shia figures like Ali ibn al-Hussein, the son of the grandson of the Prophet, who wrote about one's duties to their neighbor, And his words in the Charter of Rights says, protect your neighbor's interest when he's absent. Show him respect when he is present. Help him when he is inflicted with injustice. Do not remain on the lookout to detect his faults. And if by any chance you happen to know anything undesirable about him, hide it from others, and at the same time try to desist from improper habits. Is there any chance that he will listen to you? Then try. The author went even further. Never leave him alone in any calamity. Forgive him if he has done any wrong. In short, live with him a noble life based upon the highest Islamic ethical code. These beautiful words demand tolerance and coexistence and acceptance, a society that promotes those values. They reflect a fundamental piece of theology that's shared by all the Abrahamic faiths, which each teach in their own way that every single man, woman, and child is made in the image of God. Yet because of Iran's leadership, many people in the world would be utterly astonished that these elegant words were celebrated and are celebrated still by Shias around the world. As a student of religion, I've often wondered how especially frustrated many of Iran's Shia citizens, some of which are true martyrs as peacemakers, are when they hear their government take the ancient teachings of Islam and corrupt them into a dangerous mix of Marxism and Islamism, ideologies that are little more than a century old themselves, ideologies that have left incomprehensible suffering in their wake. And rather than being a religion marked by benevolence towards one's neighbor, it has ruthlessly victimized its own citizens and people around the world. Many of those specific things we all know well about, but in particular, I think of the religious minorities like the Baha'i and the Sufi dervishes and the evangelical Christians, my own community. And true to Marxism, they hate the West, while ordinary Iranians, they just want freedom and education and internet and a normal life in our modern world. And all the vices of the Iranian government outside of Iran, and there are numerous examples, unfortunately, they have often been done under the protective cover of religion, defiling the name of God. And I wonder, is this the Shia Islam that Iranians support? I know it isn't. It's the religion of the government. It's not the religion of the people. And it seems that the very dignity of an ancient civilization is perilously at risk, and the very name of God is shamed because of it. And I think of someone very famous, Hussein at Karbala, who said at the battle where his life was ended, as he defended his faith and civilization according to the tradition, he said these words. He said, "Can you see that truth is no longer practiced?" And I pray every day for a new day for all those who suffer in Iran and those who suffer because of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pastor Moore. And our final speaker is Ms. Juliana Teimurzi, who is a native of Iran. So we'd like to close with a personal reflection of someone whose personal roots run deep in that country. Juliana.
Thank you, Rabbi Cooper. It is an honor to be here to share a few words with all of you. My name is Juliana Teimurzi, and I'm a proud Assyrian who was born in Iran. And now I'm honored to call myself an American citizen. Iran, a land famous for its rich culture, once a beautiful tapestry of different faiths. Today, because of its ruling regime, it has become famous for exporting terror across the globe. Revolution of 1979 turned our lives upside down. The Assyrians who had lived in Persia for thousands of years began to leave Iran en masse, bringing our number down to approximately 7,000 people across the country today. Why? Because we were told that we were agents of the West because of our faith. I personally was told that I would burn in hell for my Christian name. I was smuggled out of Iran in the winter of 1989. General Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the Quds Force, the master architect who tried to fulfill Khomeini's promise of delivering his Islamic revolution to four corners of the world, caused countless lives to perish. He crushed his own defenseless countrymen who had taken to the streets of Iran asking for their freedom. He killed innocent Iraqis who were simply crying out for a better life. His reach continues till today to affect Christians of Iraq, as his militiamen are the main reason why Christians are not returning to their homes. This compared to other areas where Christians are protecting. He helped shape the Syrian war, costing the lives of over 500,000 of Syrians. He made it his own mission to organize Hezbollah and aid Hamas threaten Israel with destruction. We all know why he defeated ISIS, or he tried to dismantle ISIS, because that was a part of his expansionist strategy from Iraq all the way to the Mediterranean. This strategy must be stopped. He and the people around him have killed and maimed thousands of our brave American soldiers. Today, his reign of terror has come to an end. Today, I join the millions who are breathing a sigh of relief. Today, we unite our hearts with all those who have lost loved ones. Today, we stand with those who have suffered because of Soleimani's tyranny. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliana, and thank you for the amazing patience of the media. Rabbi Heyer, the pastor, Juliana, we're available for anyone who needs to do a one-on-one. You were patient to wait for us. We'll be patient to be available to any of you. Thank you all for coming.
با درود به شما، با آقای جورج هارونیان هستیم، یکی از برگزار کنندگان و یکی از کسانی که امروز آقای برایان هوک رو در این برنامه شرکت دادند که در پرس کانفرنس. آقای هارونیان، عرض سلام دارم خدمتتون.
درود به شما و بینندگان عزیزتون.
سپاسگزارم ازتون. اگر در مورد صحبت‌هایی که آقای برایان هوک امروز کردند و در حقیقت پالیسی و سیاست ادمنستریشن امروز امریکا رو به خصوص پس از قتل قاسم سلیمانی یا ترور قاسم سلیمانی بفرمایید.
والا تا اونجایی که من متوجه صحبت ایشان شدم، این پیام رو خیلی واضح گفت که دولت آمریکا تمام تلاشش در عرض 3 سال گذشته، زمانی که دولت ترامپ رو کار اومده، بسیار با صبر و شکیبایی برگزار کرده و انواع پیام ها به جمهوری اسلامی دادن در مورد عملیاتشون در منطقه و از اونها خواستن در موقعیت های مختلف که پایان بدن این عملیات رو، مانند برنامه‌های توسعه‌ای که میخوان در همه این کشورها مثل سوریه، لبنان، عراق، یمن نفوذ دارند و نفوذشون رو بیشتر میکنند و این گروه‌هایی که وابسته به جمهوری اسلامی هستند رو برای عملیاتی که اهداف جمهوری اسلامی هست پشتیبانی میکنند. این پیام‌ها رو بارها به اینها دادند. ولی سخنی که به نظر من در فکر من موندش این بودش که آقای هوک گفت که پرزیدنت ترامپ تشخیص داده که جمهوری اسلامی حرف زور رو میفهمه، قدرت رو میفهمه و مدارا و کنار اومدن رو باهاش بازی میکنه و این اتفاقی که افتاده در هفته های گذشته، یعنی حمله به مراکز هشت‌الشعبی و از میان بردن قاسم سلیمانی و آقای المهندس، در واقع این پیام به جمهوری اسلامی بوده که خیال نکنن که آمریکا همینطور سیاست مدارا و گذشت خودش رو ادامه میده.
یعنی در حقیقت شما معتقدید که صبر استراتژیک امریکا در این زمینه تموم شده. با توجه به صحبت‌هایی که ربای هایر کردند و مثال آوردن در مورد اسامه بن لادن یا در مورد ژنرال آلمانی که در 1942 توسط رئیس جمهور چکسلواکی دستور اساسینیشن و ترور اون داده شد و ما بعدا می‌بینیم که هم رژیم هیتلری سقوط میکنه، هم سیستم القاعده سقوط میکنه. نظر شما در مورد اینکه بعد از ترور قاسم سلیمانی متوقف نخواهد شد این ماجرا، ادامه این به کجا خواهد انجامید؟
والا این سخنی است که به هر حال من فکر کنم در حال حاضر تمام مفسرین و متفکرین دارن راجعش صحبت میکنن. پیش بینیش مشکله. الان همه منتظر آن هستن که واکنش سران جمهوری اسلامی رو ببینن در مقابل این واقعه. آن که سخن از این هستش که آیا جمهوری اسلامی حالت تهاجمی همونطور که بارها شعار دادن خواهند کرد و یا اینکه فعلا کوتاه خواهند اومد. الان به نظر من جمهوری اسلامی در یک گوشه گیر کرده و نمیدونه که چه کار بکنه. بلوف آقای ترامپ بلوف نبوده، در واقع یک حرفی که گفته بوده رو عمل کرده و اگر جمهوری اسلامی به نظرم بخواد تهاجمی به مراکز آمریکایی از سوی جمهوری اسلامی بشه و اینها البته گفتند، آقای هوک گفت فرقی بین جمهوری اسلامی و گروه‌های وابسته به جمهوری اسلامی نخواهند گذاشت و هر گونه کاری از نظر حمله به منافع آمریکا انجام بشه اینها پاسخ خواهند داد.
آقای هارونیان، در مورد ایرانیان خارج از کشور با توجه به اینکه الان جمعیت بسیار بزرگ ایرانی در خارج از کشور هست و اینها مخالف ترور، مخالف نقض حقوق بشر توسط جمهوری اسلامی علیه شهروندان ایران هستند، فی الواقع وظیفه ایرانی خارج از کشور به خصوص در رابطه با ادمنستریشن پرزیدنت ترامپ چیه؟
ببینید الان یک جنگ تبلیغاتی بسیار شدید هم در کار هستش، یعنی رسانه‌های آمریکایی و بسیاری از افراد ایرانی که در رسانه‌های مختلف ازشون نظر میخوان صحبت از این میکنن که این یک حمله بوده به یک شخصیت دولتی و کار اشتباهی بوده، باعث خطر جنگ رو بیشتر میکنه، این گونه مسائل. من فکر میکنم این چند میلیون ایرانی که در خارج از ایران، حالا در آمریکا هم هستند و اینجا رو به عنوان محل زندگی خودشون برگزیدن، الان در این شرایط وظیفهشون هستش که حرف خودشون رو بزنن و خاموش نباشن، یعنی به رسانه ها و به مسئولین مملکت، کما اینکه دیشب من فکر کنم اینطور شد، اعلام کنن که خواستار این هستن که دولت آمریکا فشار بر جمهوری اسلامی نه ملت ایران رو ادامه بده و شاید این اتفاقی که افتاده آغازی باشه برای آنکه این کشور عزیز در یک آینده نزدیکی از شر این رژیم راحت بشه.
سپاسگزاریم آقای هارونیان، به امید ایران آباد و آزاد. متشکرم.
باشید. خیلی متشکرم.